Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Mindshifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeannie. Michael and Jeannie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rachma. Michael is the author of So Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeannie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeannie Ryce.
To the brightness within you, and the truth that is rooted within me.
Hi, and welcome to Mindshifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce. Today is Memorial Day celebration number 225, and Michael will talk about that here in a little bit. We want to give you our call-in number. It is 646-200-4169. Press 1 to talk to Michael, and welcome to the show. We do have two hands already up in the switchboard, but hello, Michael.
Hello, welcome to the show, everybody. Delighted that you're here. Glad to have two hands up already. Let's just take a minute and do our standard invitation to Memorial and Veterans Day, and that is one of our goals. One of our goals is to put an end to war on planet Earth. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that by being willing to be responsible for the hostility and fear that we play the game of projecting onto others when we're in the hallucination that they are the cause of what's happening inside of us. And so the invitation is that each person who listens to the show, if you would, do at least one worksheet a day, one forgiveness process where you choose to be responsible for your hostility and fear rather than justifying it and pretending it's all somebody else's fault. You'll notice you've been through it 87 different times with 42 different people. The current person in your life is not the cause of what you're feeling. The cause of what you're feeling is what you're carrying inside of you. Forgiveness means that you go inside of you and you remove that cause. And people who've been through years and years and lifetimes and generations of drama and trauma don't remove those things quickly or easily. It's a process. It takes time. And you start with, the same way the old saying goes, you eat an elephant one bite at a time, one worksheet at a time. You begin to forgive the hostility and fear that has you in the state of an hallucination. That is, when hostility or fear is active, that's a marker that your mind is fabricating something, creating a picture out of its own content of someone else and wanting to be sure that somebody else is the problem in your life. So if you're not familiar with the forgiveness conversation, on the right-hand side of our website, there's a link that says Download Worksheets. The website is whyagain.com. Tap into that link on the right-hand side, and the first 4 links will give you the whole story on forgiveness, on the how-to. And we invite you to pick it up and start to use it. When we hit critical mass, when we get enough people who are willing to take that level of responsibility, we're going to see a massive shift on planet Earth. And that's what we're here to create. So we welcome you to the show. Jeannie, you've got a couple of callers. Let's talk to somebody.
We do. The first one, I think, is a Colorado 970. You're on the air. Is this Carrie?
Yes, it is. Can you hear me?
We can.
We can hear you loud and clear, Carrie. Welcome to the show.
Oh, perfect.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too.
Yeah. So how has your arrival in Colorado been going?
It has been very interesting, to say the least. And I've had some really I continue to do the forgiveness sheets or reality management sheets, and I just to mention, I came back to Colorado Springs area. I lived in Pagosa Springs for 16 years and had this relationship end in the last spring, and 6-year relationship. So I've been doing a lot of work on that. I'd like to share a sequence of things that have just happened and with you and get your input and guidance on how to take this to the next level. You had also suggested that I go listen to the archived radio shows on the power person and codependency and relationships, and I've been doing that and loving them. They're so educational and so helpful. I just am really excited about getting my friends to start listening in also. And but I'm learning so much, and it's really deepening my comprehension of what's going on here. So I mentioned to you last time that I ended up having a dream about this guy who's my ex, where he shot me. There wasn't blood or screaming or anything, but he shot me with a shotgun. And you know, and I had to wake up from that and go, and I've never dreamed about him very much. I had two kind of congenial dreams about him before that, trying to get myself okay with where things were now. And so I woke up from that thinking, well, you know, would I have shot him? Or, you know, I mean, is that energy that's in me that I'm seeing acted out in that dream? And then I drove all the way to Colorado. I got to this new caretaking job on a ranch that I'm at, and the reason the old caretaker is leaving is because she trains her dogs to be kind of, I think it's the German-style guard dog or something, and one of her dogs actually tore up a dog of the owner, and it's the reason that she is leaving. Well, we introduced one of her dogs to my dog, and that was fine, and then about a day later, I happened to walk up to the barn in the morning and didn't realize she had two dogs out there, and they just jumped on Maggie, my dog, took her down. My dog is a 100-pound dog. She's learned to be very kind and gentle. She's been, you know, on dog beaches and in dog parks and out with a lot of different kinds of dogs at one time, and she's learned how to be a socially friendly dog. And but this one dog just jumped on her, flipped her over on her back, and was just tearing at her throat. And the other dog kept jumping in, and the lady kept calling it off, and it jumped right back in, and I was yelling and kicking and screaming, and I'm lucky that I didn't get hurt. And we finally got the other dogs off and got Maggie out. Maggie was, like, crying, and she's a big dog, you know, so but it was pretty scary for both of us. We both were kind of shaking all day long, but I did say to myself, what did I do to draw this into my world? And then it's interesting because I started doing worksheets on, I at this point, you know, I really love my dad, and I know he really loved me, but he was incredibly oppressive when I was a child. And I had a lot of anger towards him, and I felt, you know, I thought how much I hated him the whole time I was growing up. I mean, those were literal thoughts in my mind, and of course, just beyond hatred is killing, you know. So anyway, so I started doing worksheets on that, and I also had this realization.
Breathe.
Well, yeah, thank you. I did still point breathing this morning too, but I had this realization in this process of doing the worksheets and having all this stuff surface that how it was really, I'm beginning to see my own patterns so well, and how even though, quote unquote, the guy was to blame in my relationships because he was going out on me or wanted to date other people or whatever, it was still my childhood patterns of, you know, just shutting down and wanting to leave that really ended those relationships. And I'm starting to see my own part in that. And then working with this hatred, anger stuff, I began to see, I can't even tell you right now because I'm so in it, but I started seeing how even with this guy that I just ended up not in a relationship with anymore, even though he wanted to date somebody else, it was my shutting down patterns that really, if I could have lived those differently or worked through them differently, maybe it would have ended up different. But so then this morning, as I'm working through all this stuff, and I got so much clarity in the last few days, especially after Maggie getting jumped by those other dogs and me looking at anger and rage and hatred in myself. And I had an interesting interchange with the lady whose dog they were, because afterwards I walked out to the barn to talk to her, and she started screaming at me and was really defensive, and she said, it was your dog's fault, because, you shouldn't have come in here. You knew my dogs don't like other dogs. And I just said, just calm down. It's okay. I said, let's not do this with this. And she's somebody whose mother died when she was 4, and she had an abusive father. So it's interesting how, we pull in these things into our energy field. So anyway, last night I was
opportunity to share the tools, eh?
What?
Another opportunity to share the tools.
Absolutely, and she is interested. So I'm already going to get together with her this afternoon and share some of that. So I actually ended up, I drove to my ex's place on Saturday and picked up some of my belongings that were still there, and we had agreed he wasn't going to be there. I went in the barn, got my stuff out, and drove back. It was 500 miles round trip. And then I kept doing, but I did worksheets on the sadness I felt as a result of that. And I thought, I'm learning so much. I did those all day yesterday, and I thought I'm learning so much because he has an inkling of how this stuff works, but not very deep. And I thought if I could get him to do some of this work with me, even if we're not looking at being in a relationship together, because we trigger each other more perfectly than anybody I've ever met. And there is love underneath that.
Bags of garbage, right?
What was that?
I say perfect matching bags of garbage. In this work, we define what the world calls a love relationship as a relationship made in heaven and based in matching bags of garbage.
Absolutely. And go ahead, sorry.
And those are perfect relationships because what will happen is that person will show you everything you have not dealt with. And if they have the capacity to be in support, they'll hold a space for you to move through it. If not, then their stuff will bounce off of your stuff, and it'll get crazy. And you can tell who's got work to do is who's got the pain, who's in the hostility or fear, and then who wants to rush out and drug themselves when they don't want to feel that. And by drugging themselves, they are able to maintain the hallucination that what's going on inside of them is somebody else's fault, somebody else's problem. So it's just all an interesting game, and we're here to support you.
And I say in kind of in respect to that, I always say we're really drawn together because we have the ability to help heal each other's deepest wounds, and it's or bring them up, and and if there is love and compassion there to hold the space. So I actually called him yesterday afternoon, and I asked him if he would be up for doing some of this work for me, and he said yes. And so he is going to listen. At least he said he would. We'll see if he follows through, but I think he will. He said he would listen to some of the archived radio shows, and we're going to try and meet for an hour, like every Sunday evening on the phone, and talk through maybe some of the worksheets and because we can both go away and do the work in a vacuum, but because we do trigger each other so well, it's more likely to keep this stuff active. That's what I think. I'd love to hear your input on that. Let me tell you one more piece of what happened, though. This morning, relatively early, my phone rang, and it was a friend of mine from New Hampshire, a long-time, very dear friend, and she was crying. And I don't listen to the news. I don't have TV. I don't know if you've listened to it, but a couple were shot to death in Sedona this morning, or last night, I think, maybe. And these were really good friends of my friend in New Hampshire. And they were a couple who were on vacation. They both had marriages long ago and had known each other for 2 years and were really in love, and they liked the West, so they came to tour around. And he's a forest ranger, and she's a folk singer. And they were taking a nap in their car in a scenic overlook, and a guy drove in and just shot them both through the car windows, and then drove down the road and shot a deputy sheriff. And I think the guy is still at large. And I guess there was a couple of cars there apparently when it happened, because I think they drove away and gave a description of this white van. So I put that together with these three things, these other two things I've had happen, with the dream of Randall shooting me, and then Maggie getting attacked by those dogs, and then this being so close to home, partly because I just drove across country myself, and then this is friends of a really good friend of mine and her calling up to tell me about it. Otherwise, I might not have even heard unless somebody had just told me. And just thinking of and I did worksheets on that this morning, and just thinking of, how deep the hatred inside of us is, that these things exist. And just another interesting piece is I'm half Lebanese and I'm half German Jewish, so quarter German Jewish, quarter mixed European. But, I have that Arab blood in me, which is very intense, and I'm sure in my genetics are this, probably a lot of anger. And so anyway, that's the process where I'm at. And when I did the worksheets on the person who did that shooting this morning, I thought I'm going to do some forgiveness worksheets right now on this. And then I ended up doing Selma and my dad and the guy, my ex. And so it's just been an interesting journey. So whatever insights you have, I'd love to hear.
Well, one of the things that a piece of information that actually came from an ophthalmologist that I know who works with or used to work with steering frequencies into the eye to stimulate the brain. And one of the pieces of information he used to give was that the number of possible connections in a human brain is 800 times the number of the number of molecules in the known universe. So the linkage of things within us is amazing. We have an attorney actually in Palestine who's working on translating the book into Arabic to share it in the Arabic community, and his words were, there's such rage here, and we have no way to deal with it, and thank God we're finally finding a way to deal with it. And he's committed to initiating peace initiatives. And so I would offer that perhaps your dream was symbolic of maybe what you, on some level, wanted to strike back with vengeance to do to him with that kind of genetics. And a worksheet or two in that arena would be useful. It might be your intuition telling you of something coming from him, maybe not something as blatant as a shotgun, or your mind's representation of how it interprets what he has done in the relationship.
Exactly. I feel like that's accurate for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and then again, it could also be your intuition telling you, just wanting you to be careful of and rely on the environment. One of the games that people will play, one of the kind of bastardizations of this work is people will turn it backward and make it, well, see, it's your fault that this happened, that I'm this way, that I'm doing this to you is all your fault. And each individual is the way each individual is, and it is their own responsibility. You are not ever responsible for the way another individual is or the behaviors that they do. The responsibility is that they're doing it in your space. The place where you can clean things up is, what's the part of me that draws this in, and or what did this bring up in me? And it sounds like you're doing an awesome job of opening. In the ancient teachings, they said the veil of the temple must be rent in twain. And we're not talking about the purple curtain in the church. They were saying this barrier between the subconscious and the unconscious. We've talked in the Why workshop about the fact that Harvard tells us that a maximum of 9 bits of data get into awareness when there are 10,000 brain cells firing. We have this tiny fragment in which things show up called a conscious mind. And under the surface, there's this, 800 times the number of known molecules in the universe, connections that lock all of these things together. And to be willing to have the courage, and I acknowledge you for your courage, to start to delve in on the level that you're delving into that and facing and dealing what's in those internal connections and cleaning them out is awesome. And doing worksheets around that couple that was murdered is such a gift to them. That's the real praying for the dearly departed. That's what real prayer is when you hold the space of love in the presence of whatever the insanity is that's going on. Mm-hmm. And when you can't, that's all. And, it sounds like you're right on track.
Thank you.
Very powerful.
And
very powerful.
And Any suggestions on if it actually comes to pass that I end up doing this periodic work with this guy? Any suggestions on how to manage that in a way so it's healthy for both? I mean, because I haven't been in one of your couples workshops or intensives, and I'm going to keep listening. I'm only through about 4 of the archived radio shows in that area, and there's a lot more, so I'm going to keep listening to those. But would you suggest that we actually do worksheets together, or we do our own and then maybe share with each other what we're learning out of them, or how can we benefit by just communicating with each other as we're in this process?
Well, one of my first thoughts would be that you take the archive that most approximates the issues that you guys have got, and perhaps what you realize you've been doing in the relationship, and share that with him, that you listen to it together and say, here's what I'm discovering about myself.
Okay.
And then see where that leads, if that leads to a space to an opening for him to support you in worksheets or you to support him in worksheets, if the space is there to do that. And maybe once you've done that and be real upfront about, okay, here's what I want to do. Out of bare my soul, I realize that I've done some crazy stuff, just like we humans do or non-humans do. And so here's an example of my crazy stuff. And would you be willing to listen? There's another show that gives an example of what maybe is your crazy stuff. Would you be willing to listen to it? And, instead of playing the blame game, just play the ownership game. What is it that I'm doing? And if I'm out of integrity with my commitments, then I want to own it, and I want to clean that part up in me. And one of the problems with the world is most people are doing what they feel like doing. Mm-hmm. And feelings come from those 800 times the number of known molecules in the universe when they fire. That's where feelings come from. When those brain cells fire, they create feelings. And most of it's unconscious, and a tremendous amount of it is insane. You've got to stop doing what you feel like doing. You've got to stop using feelings as a guidance for this, and you have to select a set of principles to live by, which, sounds exactly like what you're doing. Gee, these feelings are coming up, and rather than turning tail and running, I'm going to face them, I'm going to dismantle them, I'm going to be conscious, and I'm going to live according to the principles I'm learning. And that, when you do your behavior according to the principle rather than according to the way you feel, your whole life will transform.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you a question. Is there do you know if there's any group out here in Colorado Springs that's doing your work yet?
There's nobody that I know of at this point.
Okay. Well, we'll work on
there's
that.
Folks out there doing it, but there's nobody that I know of, and maybe you're going to be the person who starts it there.
Maybe I will.
There are lots of instructions on the website for starting a support group, and
okay.
And of course we're willing to create support. And in your conversation with your former, just keep us in touch with it on the show, and any support we can be, that's what we're here for.
I will. I'm really grateful that you're there, and I'm really grateful. Oh, the other thing I was going to add is I think one of the radio shows I listened to talked about anesthetizing, and that was also very revealing and very helpful to me. And I realized all the men I've been with, now my dad didn't do this, but the men that I've been with have anesthetized with other women.
Uh-huh.
And I guess it's a common thing in our culture. And
sex is a very common drug, and anything can be used as a drug or as an anesthetic, and the key is the compulsive use of it to avoid dealing with what's real and feeling what's going on. And
right.
so, and the culture is so rife with drugs. Virtually everything in this culture that doesn't simply come from the ground as food, almost everything that's bought by humans is a drug. And when you use those substances, and I don't care if it's caffeine or nicotine or junk food, white flour, white sugar, alcohol, if you utilize those things, then what happens is that reinforces the closing of the veil. the hiding of what I don't want to feel, what I don't want to look at, and the unwillingness to give it up is the measure of how deeply you're using it to hide from yourself.
Right.
And
you know,
it's been said that people will change their religions before they'll change their diets. Why? Because when you put somebody, I'm sure with the dietary counseling that you do, when you put somebody on a dietary regimen that's truly empowering, all of a sudden the things they've never dealt with start to come up, and people tend to turn tail and run, and they've got all kinds of excuses as to why they're drugging themselves. But the truth is they have to reinforce their protections by keeping that veil closed. And
right.
That's what's happened over thousands of years with humanity.
Right.
Almost everything you see in the grocery store that didn't come from the ground, that's what it is.
Right. You had mentioned that to me in Florida, that if I was digging in pretty deep, then what old habits did I have that would come up? And I said, oh, is that why I've been eating ice cream for the last 3 weeks? And I was craving coffee, and really I eat super healthfully all the time, but I realized I can even anesthetize with too much healthy food. You know, I mean, and I've also had a few, I mean, I have the training and background that I know a lot about, you know, kind of upscaling and when we start taking the layers off, what happens. And when I was a kid, when I was like 5 years old, I would chronically go around my parents' house, and they had a torn water eaves trough, that spout that came down at the ground, and it was always torn. And every summer I would tear my pinky toe on that. Well, just yesterday I tripped twice and just about ripped my pinky toe off my foot. And I also, years ago, I ended up with gonorrhea. Go ahead.
Hello? Hold for a second. We lost you for about 30 seconds there. Can you just wind back a little bit? Your voice just disappeared.
Sorry. As a child, I would chronically tear my little toe on a water spout that came down the side of my parents' house that was torn. And my childhood was very painful. So I chronically would tear my little toe every summer. I'd run out around barefoot, and my little toe was always just like torn to shreds on that thing. And so just yesterday, as I'm going through these deep layers, I tripped and just about ripped off my little toe against something just in the house where I am. And I thought, yep, here this stuff is coming to the surface. And then I actually had gonorrhea years ago. I dated a guy that had been in Vietnam, you know, when I was like 19 or 20. And so I had been treated for that homeopathically over the years. And just as I was driving out here, I ended up with a bladder infection, and I kept thinking, okay, this is connected emotionally to what's going on. And I do some homeopathy, and I tried Cantharis, which is the typical remedy for that, and it did nothing. And then I was kind of reading through my books, and Metaurinum, I was just drawn to that, and that's from the gonorrhea miasm. And I took that, and it started clearing up the bladder infection. But I can see the relationship as I take these layers off, how the physical, you know, is trying to, you know, I'm digging into the deep layers of stuff that's been suppressed and kind of allowing that to start surfacing. And so it's just really great to have the, you know, kind of such a full awareness to be able to look at these things as they come up. So anyway, thank you so much.
Well, I'm delighted that you're on the team and that you're doing it, that you're doing your work, that you're passing it on to others, and it's awesome, the results you're going to produce with it. So thank you for the opening you're creating on the planet.
You too. Many blessings.
Okay. Beth,
okay, we'll keep you posted. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right, and we have 3 more hands up. The next one is from Kentucky. Yes, from Kentucky, area code 606. You're on the air.
Hi, Michael. This is Vicki. We had spoken on Saturday afternoon.
Hi, Vicki. Welcome.
Thank you.
And what's on your mind for today? How are things in let's see, I'm trying to remember what city you're in.
Oh, McKee, little tiny town.
Little tiny town. Okay, I didn't have that one on my phone.
Very small. We're doing really well here. I work with elderly people, and we're in one of the poorest counties in the country, actually. So it's been really interesting having, it's a volunteer job, having this trying to help expand people's knowledge and get them a little bit out of the ruts that they're in, while also trying to dig myself out of my own.
Well, there's a wonderful saying in I'm not remember his name, but it says we teach best that which we most need to learn.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So I've been doing the workshops the worksheets, and those have really been helpful.
Awesome. Are there any questions we can answer for you on the worksheet?
On the worksheets themselves, no. I think I told you Saturday I'm going over some of the easy places so that I can get into the deeper ones after I've got a little bit more practice in this. So I'm not real sure how long to wait until I get into the deeper ones. I guess my mind will tell me when it's time.
Yeah, your intuition will kick in and tell you what kind of time frame is appropriate for you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be relatively easy.
Right. It seems like it would.
Cool.
Yeah.
So are you sharing the worksheet with anybody that you're working with?
Not with the people that I'm working with, not yet. I am, though. It's been a lot of fun. I live in a volunteer house with 8 other people, and I'm 61. They're all in their early 20s. And I'm sorry?
I say, what fun.
You know, it really is. They're absolutely amazing young people, and we share different views, and they're very very open to my beliefs. And so I've been starting to do some of the work with them, and a couple of them are really getting into it, so it's kind of exciting to see this happen.
Fabulous. Yeah, you give young people this at this age, and the trauma they're not going to have to create or recreate out of, one of the things in the Wise That's Happening to Me Again workshop that we talk about with what we call the body's mind is that it's the replicate mind. It just replicates whatever's in there. And so when you give them the tools with which to change that dynamic, wow, what a gift to give. That's fabulous.
It is. It's really exciting watching it happen. But I just wanted to call in and say hello to you and let you know I really enjoyed talking with you Saturday, and looking forward to getting to know everybody better.
Okay.
Awesome. All right.
We'll look forward to chatting again.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, our next caller.
Thinking of coming to Heartland for a long-term program, which would be awesome. So go ahead, sweetie.
Our next caller is from North Carolina, area code 336.
Hi,
Welcome,
Michael.
336. Who are we speaking to?
Hey there, Michael. My name's Katie. I met you in a workshop you did at the Unity Church in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Cool. Welcome.
I have really been enjoying your work. I've been doing it for several months now, and I believe that I'm in the healing crisis portion of the work.
All right.
I'm kind of in a stuck place with this, and so I wanted to call and see if you might be willing to help me work out one of the issues that I'm having.
What's the point?
I have a shellfish allergy that I think is just a trigger for some of my deeper core issues of feeling unsafe and unstable, not being able to control my life or control my safety, and mainly just dealing with the core issue of feeling really unsafe and not in power. And so I did a worksheet the other day just trying to kind of figure out if I could release that trigger to kind of maybe even release the allergy. But I definitely feel the allergy is emotionally related. It's gotten worse over time, but started when I was a child. And I'm kind of just having some issues releasing that, and it's been coming up for me quite a bit. Like I've been exposed to shellfish quite a few times now, and felt, kind of powerless around it, that my throat might close or, just kind of being really scared, and all these feelings of being unsafe are coming up. So I was going to see if maybe you could help me to maybe, figure out something else I could do a worksheet on to kind of help to release this.
Okay. So tell me about some of the worksheets you've done so far.
Well, I've done some really awesome stuff. I figured out that I've got something that I'm attracting every 3 years, starting from where I was 3 months old. I actually called my mom to talk with her to see what might have happened, because I kept having threes come up in my life, and I'm actually 33 years old right now, and my little son is 3 years old. So I kind of figured out that at 3 months old, I was having some problems with nourishment. My mom was trying to breastfeed me, and her milk wasn't coming in, so they ended up putting me on a Ryce cereal at like 3 months old, which is kind of commonly known for starting allergies in children.
Yeah, that's pretty bad to do.
Yeah, so it kind of started with that, of feeling unsafe and not nourished. And then I think at 3 years old is when my first kind of trauma started, where my sister was born, and my mom kind of said, you know, you're very jealous of your sister, which of course is very natural for a 3-year-old child where a new child is introduced. But she kind of treated me as an adult, you know, that she kind of blamed, she actually said these words: the deterioration of our relationship, meaning my mother and I, started when you were 3 years old and your sister was born because you were so jealous of her. So right there, yeah, that's pretty much explains my mom and I's relationship. So I had a very abusive childhood, and I did my first forgiveness worksheet I ever did was on my mom, and it was amazing. It released like almost all my anger. I actually enjoy being around my mom now. It's really amazing. So, of course, I got really excited about all this work, and I kind of dove into it and just probably almost went overboard with it. And then I started getting sick, and it started releasing all kinds of old things, like the caller you talked to in Colorado about her pinky toe. It was like all these old feelings and old, like, fear started coming up. I started having anxiety attacks. And, you know, even went to the doctor to get a physical because I'm like, what is going on? But, you know, I feel all that stuff, and I know exactly where it's coming from. And I feel like I've figured out the 3-year pattern. I'm attracting exactly the same thing. It's a fear of change, and a big change will happen every 3 years. And then I'm also attracting people in my life that will mirror something with my mom and I's relationship that is needed to be healed. And I also feel like a lot of it is generational as well that I'm healing. So I'm kind of in a place where I've gotten stuck, and I feel very depressed because I feel like I'm not releasing anymore, and I see kind of what needs to be released. And I feel like I recognize it, but I think there's something that's hidden or might be subconscious that I'm not seeing.
Right. So what I would offer is that you're delving into deeper levels. This is pretty natural to do. And as you delve into deeper levels, one of the things you'll do is you'll go through a stage, especially, and I have no idea whether you have or not, if you've used any kinds of drugs or alcohol, there'll be a stage where you just have to burn off that unconsciousness. It's just part of the process.
You just have to kind of be with it and be like an observer. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, just keep moving through your work and let the things peel off. It's like you'll hit a plateau and just run a general physiological, emotional detox where you might not see a major breakthrough, and then all of a sudden, bang, you're ready for the next level. But in order to move to the next level, you've got to process out the load of baggage that's holding you back at this level. And
right.
That can take, of course, using all of the above, using all of the tools and the willingness. And, you don't have to go looking for or digging into the garbage. If you just live your life as a connected space of love, and when something shows up that brings up something less than love, there's the work you do. It's not about finding the deep, dark thing in your past. It's the willingness to live a true human life. And for those who are new to the show, we define a human life as not words, but rather hold a newborn child, and you know what a human life is. And so you live in that human life, and when you're ready, the next layer will surface. The next layer will come along with no challenges whatsoever.
Okay. Well, I've done, the worksheet on the shellfish, and it keeps coming up in my life. The trigger. I keep being exposed to the shellfish over and over. Maybe like 5 times within the last month. It's been pretty funny. I mean, I just kind of laugh because I'm like, oh, here it is again, So I think I've been just trying to be really strong and just be like, you know what, I'm okay, I'm safe, don't worry, and then just kind of removing myself from the situation. But I wish there was a way. I know that you're kind of supposed to give it up to spirit at some point. So I guess I kind of wonder, like, how many worksheets, since the same triggers showed up maybe 4 or 5 times in the last month, the shellfish, and then I do a worksheet on the shellfish, do you keep continuing to do the worksheet? I feel like I keep coming up with the same thing. Like maybe there's something that I'm not seeing, but just continue to do it every time that I'm around this trigger maybe, and then hopefully I'll figure it out.
Well, when they asked the master how many worksheets do we have to do, and their question was, is 7 enough? His answer was no, 77 times 70. Right. You're going to do an infinite number of worksheets around whatever issues in your face at the moment. And so have you done worksheets around being safe in your environment? Have you done worksheets around jealousy with your sister, where your sister's the object of attention, her name is number 1A, and I'm jealous, or I don't remember being jealous, or whatever goes on? Worksheets on yourself around jealousy, worksheets on the deterioration of your relationship with mom. They'd all be areas to go to process those things out.
Good idea. Sometimes it's not so obvious. All right, cool.
But they'd be the places I'd go. And then just, in most of the religions, many of the religions, there's a set of beads. And if you think about the beads are symbolic. It's like going from one issue to another, to another, to another. You're delving down into deeper and deeper levels. And the beads are about, symbolically taking the mind and giving the mind the message that we're going deeper, deeper, deeper into this internal world and clearing it out. And so you might think of the shellfish as a bead, and then so now it opens up, rice cereal. Have I done a worksheet on what I was fed as a child and the physical trauma I had from being fed things that a 3-month-old digestive system is not ready to handle? So that would be one. Perhaps the child having anger at the physical pain it was in and associating that anger with mom. So it might be worksheets on what mom fed you or didn't feed you. There'd be, if you think of it as a set of beads, then you go from issue to issue to issue, and that's how you get to clean it up.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Yeah, and have you... One more question, sorry.
Go for it. No, sorry. That's what we're here for.
Well, I don't want to take up other people's time as well, but...
Yeah, okay, so let me just, here's another worksheet I'll invite you to do. Okay?
Okay.
This probably comes from mom having only time for the newborn. Newborns are pretty consuming.
Yes.
So I deserve the time, the support, and the space to deal with and process what I need to deal with. And I deserve that not because of anything other than the Creator put the breath of life in me.
Yep. Thank you. That's a big one. Maybe that's it.
I got it.
Yeah, you got it. I knew you would. So I have one other thing. Along with doing my work, I'm in a relationship where, we're trying to, obviously all relationships, you're trying to learn how to communicate. So I've found this work, and this is just life-changing for me. I mean, this is really amazing stuff, so I get really excited about it, and I try to share it with my significant other, and they are the significant other is very afraid of this work and dealing with any feelings whatsoever. So I'm trying to think of, I don't know, I'm trying to tell myself that basically I'm the only one that needs to do it because the work is really about me and nobody can make you feel a certain way. But it's kind of frustrating to me when, you don't feel that support system from your significant other. They almost treat you like you're crazy,
Okay. So there are a couple of worksheets. So worksheet on significant other, his name, and frustration. What's my thought? I'm being dissed. He doesn't have time for me. He thinks I'm crazy. You know, so there would be some worksheets to do, and then worksheets on being called crazy or selfish or self-centered, which might tie back to those childhood issues.
Actually, I did do a worksheet on selfish, and I kept writing shellfish when I did the worksheet instead of selfish.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I did make that connection. So I have been working on selfish because I think I was told that as a child. I don't remember it, but I'm sure I probably was. So especially with the sister thing and the jealous, you know. So I have been working on that. So, but you gave me a lot of other good ideas of things to work on. So I felt like I was just kind of in a stuck place. So I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, we hold the space and are here to absolutely support you. And yes, we have the time to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, blessings. Take care.
You too.
Hey, Tweety, we've got another caller.
We do, and this one, we actually have 2 more callers. They're coming in like wildfire today, and that's awesome. The next one is Michigan. Perhaps this is Rex. You're on the air.
Hi, Jeannie. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Rex.
Hey there. Good. How do you be? Happy New Year.
I'm doing well in this moment. Thank you. Happy New Year to you as well, and both of you and the entire group.
Awesome.
I had a little bit of a question for clarification on your comment about feelings that we need to be run by our principles, which I happen to agree that I think that's ideal. But I was the question came to my mind to ask for clarification for all of us. If you differentiate between feelings and emotions, and then also quite often intuition is something that we do through and access through a state of feeling. So I wondered if you'd speak about that a little bit and offer some clarification.
Yeah, I think we need to discern when our intuition is guiding us, and it will come in the form of an intuitive feeling, but it's different than the emotions. So it's discerning. Most people in the culture don't go into the refinement of feelings versus emotions. That's certainly another level of conversation. And when you say to most people, well, why did you do that? Well, I felt like it. And it really is my emotions were driving me to it. I said what I said. I did what I did because my emotions were driving me to it. And so that's what I'm warning against, because feelings, or those emotions, if you make that refinement, are shadows of thoughts. And when we allow unconscious thoughts to run us, we're functioning unconsciously. The whole idea, and we do a whole workshop called On Creating Consciously, is get to the point where we do function consciously in our lives. And by following those things that come from unconscious thoughts, I felt like it, I was angry, so I felt like saying that. Well, I snapped at them because, I felt like it, really is saying I'm being driven by an emotional nature. And so the development of discernment, we actually do a whole 9-day intensive on intuitive development, where you get that sense or a feeling, which more properly is what comes from our spiritual nature, that is guiding us through intuition, which is what we consider to be one of the 5 smooth stones.
Very good. Yes, that I can work with. That feels congruent. It feels congruent. How's that? That makes me smile.
Cool. What else is exciting?
Well, also, just an overview of listening to the callers today, and I have been hearing this more and more all the time. Those of us who've been doing this work for a fairly long period of time, to hear.
Say that again, Rick.
Those of us that have been doing the work, whether it be the forgiveness work or just the breath work and doing the work, our inner work, for a longer period of time, like, you and I and some other people, I've been noticing a dramatic shift, or appears to be dramatic in me, of how people are getting it so fast. In listening to this conversation with this young woman, the last one, who about the shellfish and so forth, I mean, she put some stuff together, and the impression I got is that she experienced a workshop and started doing worksheets. And I'm just sitting here going, wow, I'm impressed. You know what I mean? And I think I just wanted to acknowledge that, because that feels like a shift, a big shift that's happening on a collective level. And within that, I also am seeing and hearing the opposite take place, or apparently the opposite take place, in situations like the previous caller talking about, these two beautiful people who fell in love and were murdered in their car on a lookout, and coming to mind, my sister-in-law made her transition, which was a very gentle transition. It was a beautiful transition. And then her daughter had made her transition in her sleep a month before that. And then a friend of my mother's, Mitzi's mother, or Lana's mother's, a friend of hers actually had a son who was at a bar, and they were just hanging out on their Christmas break, and they got a little rowdy, and so the bouncers asked them to leave, so they evidently cooperated and left. They were just college students, 24, and they left the building, and then the bouncers came out and beat the young man to death. And
breathe on that one.
Yeah, that surfaces a lot of sadness.
Yeah, that's huge. Wow.
So, I've done a fair amount of work around that, and there's more to do, obviously, and it's that duality that I'm observing. The contrast has been seems to be intensifying, and I wanted to acknowledge that from both sides, because it's valuable to hear, that there's both sides happening, and it seems to be crescendoing and escalating very rapidly. So I wanted to share that, and thank you for patience, allowing me to breathe through my own experience surfacing in a moment.
Yeah. Well, I certainly join you in the healing of that grief and loss. There's certainly in most of us such a deep sense of grief and loss that has never been resolved and never been dealt with. And what we tend to do is drug ourselves and stay on top of it. Don't want to feel it, don't want to deal with it, and it becomes actually one of the most common drugs on the planet for dealing with that is hostility. Is to keep things hidden through the hostility that we don't want to look at. And so I certainly join you and support you in being just wide open and letting that move. And yes, I think you're right. There is a new level of understanding with the work. This, we've been doing this now for this particular forgiveness work for about 26 or 27 years now. And an example for me is the teacher's training. We have been doing teacher training at Heartland for about the last 16 or 17 years now. And when I look at the level of comprehension, and we've had hundreds of people through teacher's training with the Y work, when I look at the level of comprehension this summer, everybody that was at the summer teacher's training was at least 60%, if I had to pick a number, more keyed in, had a better understanding by at least 60%, and a better ability to present the material than everybody that's been through teacher training except for maybe 4 or 5 people over the years.
Wow, that's impressive.
It's amazing. And I think to me, that's a signal that we're hitting critical mass.
Mm. And your experience of the critical mass?
Well, it's that people are comprehending. People are sitting in one workshop. Now, maybe some of it is that I'm learning how to teach it finally, but people are sitting in one workshop and walking out saying, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the worksheets. I am going to continue to do my work. And in the past, it took years for most people to get the willingness up to go for that, to do that.
Yes, and I concur. I actually right with you on that. Part of the challenge that I've been working with through this is it's like what you described, Michael. It's when we tap into that, what I might, my verbiage might be the collective level of sadness and grief and loss. It's just at times it seems overwhelming, of tapping into that genetic, relational qualities that go, through who knows how long. That goes back as far as you want to go. And that's the part that I'm seeing in areas where things like this young man just being beat, and his friend felt so bad about leaving because he ran away to save his life, and he wished he'd have stayed, and there was there apparently, from our perspective, we don't know what was going on there, but it apparently seemed just futile. It didn't seem like there was any reason for it. And in this occasion with this lady and this man in the car, this isn't, sadly enough, it's become very commonplace to hear that every day. If I'm paying attention to the depths of the issues that are surfacing for people and how they're reacting to them. So it's just a motivation for, us doing our own inner work and accelerating that. Those of us that are really going for it to just increase the level of commitment to that. So thanks for giving me a voice to be able to share that, Michael and Jeannie. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm delighted to be on the team, delighted to be on your team. And Rex, you've got a support group in Lansing, Michigan. If anybody's in the Lansing area, check out Rex's website, which is stillpointbreathoflife.com. Or check out whyagain.com for the support group times. Do you have any workshops scheduled, Rex?
Well, I just did a workshop, How to Keep Your Resolutions, and I really enjoyed it. It was a workshop that I actually was able to take the material that we do with the bias and the healing relationships and tied together some of the why stuff and put it all together. So it was a fun workshop. It was the first time I'd done it. And then this Saturday, I'm doing another workshop called Awaken to the New Paradigm. And it really is going to tie in some of the conversation we've had a little bit of today of helping people see that there's an acceleration. It's time to choose the new paradigm versus the old paradigm, which was one of hostility, fear, death, and destruction. So in a nutshell, that's this Saturday.
Awesome. So that's on your website, I assume, if somebody needs the information?
Specific? Yes. Should be, yes.
Cool.
And they can always call me off my website, yep. Thank you, Michael.
Rex, we appreciate your blessings.
All right, God bless.
Take care. Bye-bye. Well, we're down to about a minute or two. Do we have another caller, Jeannie?
We do, but don't think we're going to get to the caller today because we have a question in the chat room that came up first. But the caller's area code 541, which is Oregon. So if you would call back tomorrow, you can be first on the show. The comments in the chat room, it's not really a question, but could you clarify the difference between feelings and emotion and describe what being intuitive is?
Okay. Well, we've got about 60 seconds. So emotions are a result of or an indicator of the quality of thought process that we're using. So if I put in a thought based in hatred, I'm going to have the emotion hatred come up. If I'm in dissociation of that and my hatred's resonating, I'm going to feel hateful towards someone. I'm going to say hateful things. So that would be a feeling. And an emotion. A feeling is something properly described that comes from our true being. And intuitive an intuitive sense instead of coming from that emotional nature will come from our being. And that's where we have direct interaction, and probably we need to put that question on for tomorrow. So if you want to call in or ask a question tomorrow, we'll continue that discussion. And thanks for your call. Blessings. Have the best year yet of your eternal life.
Thank you for listening to Mind Shifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife Jeannie, who present that internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeannie are here every Monday through Friday on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeannie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.